She was the tiny crowned child of stars, yet so lonely inside beyond the mapped edges of space, where stars were old and light moved slowly. A human research ship detected something impossible. Their sensors picked up a steady pulse, soft and warm, coming from the remains of a collapsed star. At first, the crew thought it was an echo or a trick of broken instruments. Stars did not send heartbeats. The ship moved closer. Inside the glowing dust of the dead star, there was a small object floating untouched by heat or gravity. It looked like a cradle made of light, and inside that cradle lay a child. She was very small, no older than a newborn. Her skin glowed faintly, like starlight seen through mist. Around her head rested a thin crown, not made of metal, but of living light. It moved slowly, like it was breathing with her. Every scanner on the ship screamed warnings, yet none of them showed danger. Instead, they showed silence. Deep, calm silence. The crew stood frozen. No one spoke for a long time. Captain Elias was the first to move. He was an old man who had seen wars, first contact, and worlds burn. Yet his hands shook as he gave the order to bring the child aboard. When they lifted her from the cradle, the dead star finally collapsed into darkness. It was as if it had waited just to let her go. They wrapped her in a thermal blanket. She cried once, a soft sound, like wind through glass. The crown brightened for a moment, then dimmed again. No one slept on that ship. By the time they returned to human space, rumors had already spread. A child born of stars, a crowned infant found in death itself. Governments demanded answers. Scientists demanded control. Religious groups demanded access. Military leaders demanded secrecy. The child was placed in a quiet station far from Earth. It was clean, bright, and guarded by more weapons than some planets. The people who watched her tried to keep distance, but something about her made that impossible. Guards found themselves standing closer than ordered. Doctors spoke to her even though she could not understand words yet. Technicians slowed their steps when passing her room. She did not cry much. She stared. Her eyes were dark, deeper than space, and when she looked at someone, they felt seen, not judged, not feared, just seen. They called her a miracle in reports, an asset in private meetings, a risk in military files. No one called her a child. As months passed, it became clear she grew faster than normal humans. Her body aged slowly, but her mind was alert. She learned words early. She learned silence even faster. When people argued near her, the lights flickered. When fear filled the room, machines hesitated, like they were unsure if they should keep working. Scientists studied the crown more than they studied her. The crown could not be removed. Every attempt failed. Tools melted. Energy fields shut down. One time, a researcher tried to cut it with a focused beam. The beam bent away, harmlessly, and the man fell to his knees, crying without knowing why. After that, no one tried again. The child watched everything. She noticed how people smiled at her but stepped back when the crown glowed. She noticed how guards relaxed when she laughed, but tightened their grip when alarms sounded. She noticed how her name was never spoken with warmth, only with care. They gave her a simple name, short, easy to say, but they said it like a label, not like a gift. At night, she was alone. Her room was large, filled with toys chosen by committees. Soft lights glowed on the walls. Stars were projected on the ceiling. Yet the room felt empty. The crown dimmed during sleep, but it never turned off. It was always awake, even when she was not. Sometimes she dreamed of warmth. Not heat, but something closer, something holding her without fear. She woke up feeling heavy inside. Years passed. Human time moved forward. Outside the station, the galaxy shifted. Alien councils noticed the strange signals that came and went like a quiet song. Old machines woke up. Ancient watchers turned their gaze toward human space. Something had been found. The humans did not know this yet. Inside the station, the girl grew quieter. She learned to answer questions with few words. She stopped asking why she could not leave her room. She stopped asking why people never touched the crown, or even came too close. One day, a young caretaker broke protocol. Her name was Lyra. She was not important. She had no rank worth noting. She was assigned to clean the child's room and bring meals. Unlike others, she talked about simple things, weather on Earth, stories from her childhood, bad jokes. One evening when the girl was sitting on the floor holding a small toy star, Lyra sat beside her. "You look lonely," Lyra said softly. The girl looked up.
"I am," she replied. The crown flickered.
Alarms rang through the station. Power surged. Gravity shifted for half a second. Somewhere far away, a sensor array shattered like glass. Guards rushed in. Lyra was pulled away, shaking. Orders were shouted. Systems reset. The girl remained still. Her eyes were wide. For the first time, fear filled her chest. Not fear of punishment. Fear of herself. After that, they limited contact even more. She understood then. Her feelings did things. Her pain moved the world, so she learned to hide it. She smiled when expected. She answered calmly. She swallowed the heavy weight inside her chest and pushed it down, deep where no one could see it. The crown dimmed more often. But far beyond the station, in dark space where no human ship had ever flown, something ancient stirred. A signal had been sent when the child felt seen. And it had been heard. The crowned child of stars sat alone in a bright room, surrounded by protection, watched by 1,000 eyes. And she had never felt more alone. She had grown taller, though still small for her age, and her eyes held more than mere human knowledge. People around her noticed that even when she spoke in a soft voice, her words carried weight. Conversations would pause. Decisions seemed to shift. Machines and instruments often stopped responding when her attention lingered too long. The crown atop her head moved slowly, as if alive, reacting to thoughts and emotions invisible to others. Her name was quiet, like a secret spoken in rooms where walls themselves held judgment. She was watched constantly, yet the loneliness inside her did not fade. Scientists, soldiers, and caretakers alike feared the consequences of angering her, though she had never deliberately caused harm. She had learned early that fear could bend reality. She learned that by holding her pain inside, she could keep those around her safe. But that only made the walls of her world grow taller, thicker, and colder. Outside the station, the galaxy was restless. Ancient starships, long thought extinct, hummed back to life. Sensors from distant civilizations picked up irregular signals. Something had recognized the child, something old, something patient, and it was moving toward her. The humans noticed the signals first. Analysts pored over the readings, unable to make sense of them. Every array, every telescope, every listening post detected a pulse, faint but deliberate, spreading from the edge of known space The pulse mirrored the crown's energy and frequency and pattern, yet it was far larger, older, and impossibly intelligent. The council convened in secret. "It is reacting to her," said one diplomat, voice tight with disbelief. "To the crown, not her, but the energy she carries."
"No," another insisted. "She is the crown."
"The crown is her."
They cannot be separated. Meanwhile, the child remained in her bright room, doing nothing outwardly unusual.
Her days were spent with the same routines: soft lessons, quiet play, silent observation. Yet inside, she sensed something approaching. Every day, it came closer. Every night, it whispered through her dreams, not in words, but in images. Ships shaped like shards of black crystal moving through voids older than stars, figures tall and thin, with eyes empty and endless. They were coming for her, and yet, in some hidden part of her mind, she understood. They did not yet know what she could do. She began testing herself quietly. When she was alone, she would concentrate on small objects, stretching her focus until the toy ships, the small drones, or even the holographic projectors would move slightly, a faint tremble, or a flicker of power. One night, she tried to pull the gravity of a chair toward her. The crown glowed faintly, then shivered, then split the light into thin ribbons that coiled in the air. She gasped. That sound alone triggered a minor surge in the station. Lights blinked, doors locked automatically. Alarms whispered across the corridors. Guards arrived in record time, yet found nothing amiss. Her eyes were wide, almost frightened at herself, though no one would ever understand why. Humanity had begun to realize that her power was not just a weapon or a curiosity. It was a force beyond comprehension. Governments debated what to do, weighing treaties against instinct. Scientists suggested containment, though every attempt at physical restraints had failed. Soldiers argued for distance, yet nobody could resist watching her. A young researcher named Tavin was assigned to study her more closely. Unlike others, he was not afraid of her. He did not hide behind orders or fear. He treated her as a child, asking questions, speaking softly, reading stories to her, and sometimes laughing. The child, despite years of isolation and observation, began to respond to him differently. She spoke more freely, though carefully, revealing glimpses of understanding and even humor. For the first time, she did not feel completely alone, though the crown's subtle glow always reminded her that the world around her was dangerous and unpredictable. Her connection to the crown became more complex. It pulsed with her moods, but now, when fear or pain surged, the crown reacted violently. It sent energy waves that could disrupt communications and instruments far from the station. One afternoon, when a minor dispute arose between the military commanders about how to relocate her for safety, the crown emitted a flash bright enough to make the ceiling panels sing and spark. Glass and metal vibrated as if the station itself were in pain. No one was injured, but the message was clear. Do not provoke her, and do not underestimate her. The child began to isolate herself more, not out of anger, but necessity. She understood that others could not withstand the truth of her existence. Tavin noticed, but he did not retreat. Instead, he respected her silence, sitting near her quietly, letting her choose when to speak or act. Sometimes he brought small models of planets or stars for her to move in the air. She appreciated these gifts in her own quiet way, though the crown occasionally startled her by reacting with uncontrolled flashes. As months passed, the signals from the distant regions of space intensified. Ancient ships moved closer to human space, scanning, calculating, waiting. It was clear to the human council that they faced a civilization far older, far more advanced, and far more dangerous than anything they had ever known. They did not yet understand that this civilization sought the child herself, not the station, not humanity, but the crown she bore. The child, meanwhile, sensed their presence without fully understanding it. One night, as she lay on the floor with her eyes on the ceiling stars, the crown shifted and whispered to her, not in words, but in feeling. A cold pressure, distant yet close, hunger and recognition in equal measure. She shivered. For the first time she realized that the galaxy was watching her as much as she watched it. Tavin noticed her unease and sat quietly beside her. "Do you feel them?" he asked softly. She nodded once. "They are coming," she said, voice almost a whisper. "They know me." Tavin did not speak, because speaking might break the fragile calm. Instead, he stayed beside her, silently sharing the moment. Days later, the first signs of the approaching fleet appeared near the edge of the sector. Long shadows moved in the void, scanning points of interest with deadly precision. Humans scrambled. The council called emergency meetings. Star defenses were prepared, though none had ever faced a threat quite like this. Every missile, every shield, every strategy was useless against the unknown entities that moved with purpose and patience. The child sensed their approach as she played quietly in her room. She felt the energy of their ships like a heartbeat that did not belong to her, pulsing and searching. Her crown pulsed in response, faintly at first, then with greater intensity. She felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. She wondered, as she often did, whether she would be able to protect herself, or whether someone else would have to. Then, the fleet appeared at the edges of human space, scanning systems in silence. Every fleet the humans had assembled moved toward it, yet the ships hesitated, in confusion. Their weapons malfunctioned near the signals of the approaching vessels. Sensors failed. Navigation systems blinked and died. Humans realized with growing terror that this enemy did not fight with fire or destruction. They fought with understanding beyond human comprehension, and through it all, the child watched. The crown reacted violently now. It twisted and shimmered, sending arcs of energy into the walls and floors of her room. The lights in her station flickered. Alarms rang. Guards arrived in a panic, but nothing could touch her. She did not want to hurt anyone. She had learned not to. But she understood, more clearly than anyone, that she was the center of attention for the entire galaxy. Everything was moving toward her, toward the crown, toward her small body that held the power of stars. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her room was bright, but her mind was dark. The signals continued to pulse in the distance, slow and deliberate. She could feel the thoughts of ships far away probing her. She wondered, for the first time, what it would mean if she did not protect herself. And then she decided quietly that she would. The next morning, humans prepared defenses, unaware of what truly threatened them. The child, small, pale, and crowned with living light, stood alone in her room. But inside her chest, a determination had awakened. The galaxy was coming for her, and she was not going to be taken without understanding why. The crown shimmered in agreement, a soft light that promised more than protection. And far beyond the edge of the known galaxy, the ancient fleet slowed, sensing the challenge it had not expected. The child of stars was not just a miracle. She was an unknown force, and she was learning how to survive. The warning came slowly at first, like a whisper carried on the solar wind. Then it became undeniable. Alien vessels, sleek and black, moved through the outer systems of human space with a precision that no human fleet had ever matched. They did not respond to communication attempts, and their sensors ignored all probes. The humans were terrified, but what frightened them most was the pattern of movement. It was deliberate, measured, and focused entirely on the station where the Child of Stars lived. Inside the station, life continued in uneasy rhythm. The child, still small and crowned with living light, observed everything from her quiet room. She noticed the tension in the corridors, the hurried meetings of the council, and the anxious glances of soldiers as they prepared weapons that she knew would not matter. Even Tavin, who remained her quiet companion and teacher, moved with uncharacteristic urgency. She had grown since the first warning. Not physically so much, though she had gained some height, but in presence. People sensed her growing awareness, her quiet understanding of forces far beyond human comprehension. The crown above her head pulsed with energy, reacting subtly to her thoughts, emotions, and fears. It was alive, a part of her, yet separate, and now more responsive than ever. The first strike came without ceremony. Alien ships emerged from beyond the known edge of space, moving through human defenses with ease. They did not fire weapons at first. They did not announce themselves. They simply appeared in orbit above the station, hovering silently like shadows stretching across the void. Humans scrambled fighters and ships, but every system seemed to hesitate near them. Engines faltered, shields wavered. Missiles misfired, sensors reported nothing. The station went into lockdown. Everyone was ordered to remain calm, but panic had already spread. The child watched the chaos quietly. She understood that her crown had drawn them here. She understood that her mere existence was the reason these ships had come. And she understood, in a way no one else could, that the humans around her were counting on her to survive, even though they did not realize it. Tavin stayed by her side. He had never been afraid of her, and he did not flinch now. "They are testing us," he whispered. "Do not let them scare you. They do not understand what we are." The child nodded. Her eyes darkened like distant nebulae. The crown above her head shimmered, responding to her quiet determination. For the first time, she actively tried to control its energy. Small sparks of power flickered around her room, subtle but noticeable. She focused, centering her mind, drawing the crown's light inward. The aliens did not wait. Suddenly, a pulse of energy shot through the station. Doors slammed. Floors vibrated. Lights flickered violently. Guards and scientists alike were thrown to the ground. Alarms screamed. The child felt the surge as if it were a cold wind brushing against her skin. Her crown flared, and the pulse stopped instantly. The ships halted above the station, hovering, watching, probing, unsure. The humans looked at her in disbelief. Some whispered that she had just saved them. Others were too afraid to even speak. Tavin only nodded, understanding. The child's control over the crown had saved the station from the first attack. But the calm did not last. The alien vessels began a coordinated assault. They used beams that twisted space and gravity, bending the station's very structure. They fired bursts of energy that disintegrated matter before it could react. The humans tried to fight back, but their weapons failed, confused by forces they could not see. Ships were destroyed almost instantly. Commanders shouted orders, but the alien fleet ignored them all, moving with terrifying intelligence. The child watched quietly. Her crown pulsed and writhed above her head. Each time the alien ships attacked, the crown reacted. It did not attack them in the way humans expected. There were no weapons, No destruction aimed outward. Instead, the crown created distortions, subtle but powerful, redirecting attacks, absorbing energy, and protecting those around her. Every surge of fear or pain she felt amplified the crown's reaction. She realized that if she lost control, everything could be destroyed. Tavin reached for her hand. "Focus," he said. "You do not have to be afraid. Let them see that we will not give you up." She nodded, gripping his hand. The crown flared again, brighter than ever before. Energy arcs danced across the room. The alien beams bent around the station as if avoiding an invisible shield. Walls trembled. Consoles sparked. The child could feel every pulse of energy in the station, every fear and every hope. It was overwhelming, yet she centered herself, calming the flood of sensations with quiet determination. The humans began to understand something profound. They were fighting not with weapons or strategy, but with courage and sacrifice. Each soldier who held their ground, each technician who kept systems running, contributed to the crown's energy, though they did not know it. Their fear and determination were feeding the child's power in ways she could sense but not yet fully control. The alien fleet hesitated, confused by the unexpected resistance. They had anticipated fear, surrender, or at least panic. Instead, they found humans standing firm, ready to die rather than give up the child. That was something the aliens could not comprehend. Their attacks faltered, beams missed, fields collapsed around their own ships. The child felt a strange sense of pride. Not pride in herself, but in the humans who had chosen to stand with her. She realized that their willingness to protect her, even knowing the danger, made her stronger. The crown responded, amplifying her energy, stabilizing the station, and creating a protective barrier around everyone. Hours passed. The aliens continued to test and probe, but they could not break through. Ships were damaged, some destroyed, yet the humans survived. Soldiers and civilians alike had become part of the child's defense without knowing it. Every heartbeat, every act of courage fed the crown's power. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of the alien vessels broke formation and approached the station directly. It fired a concentrated beam, aimed at the heart of the facility. The child felt the danger immediately. Her crown flared violently. Energy arcs exploded around her room. The beam hit the crown's protective field and shattered against it. Sparks of light filled the air. Consoles melted. The room shook. And then, silence. The alien ship recoiled as if struck by a force it could not measure. It stopped. Its sensors blinked. It did not understand what had happened. The humans stared in awe. The child, small and pale, stood amidst the chaos, her crown dim but still pulsing with quiet power. Tavin stepped forward. "Do you see now?" he said softly. "They cannot take you. Not if we are with you." The child nodded. Her eyes dark and wide, she understood something fundamental. She was not alone, not truly. Humans had chosen her. They had risked everything for her, even when they did not fully understand her. Their courage, their loyalty, their willingness to sacrifice themselves for a child they barely knew. It made her more than the crown, more than the light, more than the power within her. It made her human. The alien fleet withdrew slowly, not defeated, but wary. They had underestimated the humans, and they had underestimated her. The child watched them leave, feeling both relief and fear. She knew they would return, stronger and more determined, but she also knew something else. She had allies. Humans were fragile, imperfect and limited, but their hearts were powerful in ways she had never imagined. That night, the station was quiet, systems were repaired, alarms silenced, and guards exhausted. The child sat on the floor of a room, small and alone, yet surrounded by the presence of those who had chosen to stand with her. The crown above her head flickered gently, responding to her thoughts, her relief, her growing understanding of the bond she shared with those humans. Chavin knelt beside her. "You do not have to be afraid anymore," he said softly. "We are with you, all of us." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the faint starlight of the crown. "I will try," she whispered. "I do not want anyone to be hurt. I do not want anyone to die because of me." Tavin smiled. "Then we will stand together. You are not alone anymore." For the first time in her life, the child of stars felt a spark of something she had never truly known: trust. And for the first time she allowed herself to hope. Outside the station, distant stars shone, indifferent yet constant. The alien fleet drifted back into the void, aware now that their approach had been anticipated, their power countered by something unexpected. They would return, and they would be stronger. But they had learned something crucial. The child was not just a beacon of power. She was a force born of human courage and loyalty, and humans had chosen her side. The crown above her head dimmed gently, as if approving. She was small. She was young. She was alone in the room, yet she was no longer alone in the galaxy. She had allies. She had friends. She had humanity itself standing with her. The child of stars, crowned and quiet, had survived her first real test. And she knew deep inside that this was only the beginning. The days after the first attack were tense, but quiet. The humans worked tirelessly, repairing the station, reinforcing defenses, and tending to the crew who had been shaken by the encounter. Yet the child of stars felt a change deep within her. The crown above her head pulsed differently now, not in response to fear or anger, but with something older, heavier, and unfamiliar. It hummed constantly, vibrating with memories she did not recognize. Memories that were not hers, but felt connected to her in ways she could not understand. She sat alone in her room, staring at her reflection in a polished console. Her eyes, deep and dark, like space itself, seemed older than the humans around her. The crown shimmered faintly, splitting the light into ribbons that twisted in the air. She felt a strange pull, as if the crown wanted her to remember something important, something she had forgotten even before she had been born. Tavin noticed her quiet mood. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "Are you feeling well?" he asked. She shook her head. "The crown? It is different now. It is trying to show me something." He knelt beside her, resting a hand lightly on hers. "Do you want to see it?" She nodded. The crown flared suddenly, brighter than it ever had before. Light spiraled upward, wrapping around her small form, and the room seemed to dissolve into stars. She felt weightless, suspended in a void filled with echoes of a distant past. Images appeared in her mind. She saw stars forming and dying, planets being born and destroyed, civilizations rising and falling. She saw beings older than anything humans could imagine, and among them a figure that looked like her, crowned with light, floating among the cosmos. She realized with a shock that the crown had been here before her, that it had belonged to someone or something far older than she could understand. The visions shifted suddenly, showing destruction. A great war, not fought with weapons, but with power that bent reality itself. Entire galaxies burned as beings fought for control over the energy she now carried. She saw the reason the crown existed. It was not just a symbol or a tool. It was a memory, a record, a warning. She gasped. The visions overwhelmed her, and the crown flared violently, sending arcs of energy across the room. Consoles sparked. Lights flickered. Tavin grabbed her gently, steadying her. "Breathe," he said softly. "You are safe. You are here. You are not alone." Slowly she calmed. The crown's light dimmed, but it did not disappear. Instead, it pulsed softly, as if listening. She realized that the crown was not just showing her memories. It was communicating. It wanted her to understand. The child began to see clearly. The crown had been created by an ancient civilization to record their failures and their understanding of power. They had tried to control it, to use it as a weapon, but their lack of compassion had caused their downfall. The crown had chosen her because she was different. She had the capacity to feel, to care, to make choices that were guided not by logic alone, but by understanding. But the revelation brought fear. She realized that the aliens who had attacked were not random. They were aware of the crown's history. They had identified her as the last living link to this ancient power. They had come to claim her, to use her as they had used the crown before. And now, with the crown awakening memories within her, she understood the danger fully. She sat quietly, trying to calm the storm inside her. Her small hands rested on the floor, and the crown hovered above her head, trembling with energy. She understood that if she lost control, the station, and perhaps much of human space, could be destroyed. She was not yet ready for that responsibility. Tavin remained beside her. "You are not alone," he repeated. "We will help you. Whatever comes, we will stand with you." Her eyes softened. She wanted to believe him, but the weight of the crown's history pressed on her. She realized that she could not hide from what she was. The crown was not just hers to bear. It was a living reminder of the past, and she could not ignore it. That night, the station was quiet. Humans slept or worked silently, unaware of the visions unfolding in the child's mind. She remained awake, the crown pulsing gently as it fed her understanding. She saw not only the mistakes of the past, but also the possibility of the future. She realized that power without compassion could destroy everything, but power guided by empathy could protect, heal, and even create. The next morning, alarms sounded. The alien fleet had returned, larger and more coordinated. They did not send messages or warnings. They appeared in orbit above the station, their ships like dark shards moving through space with precision and patience. Humans scrambled to defend the station, but the ships ignored every maneuver, every missile, every attempt at communication. The child felt the approach in her chest, as if the energy of the ships were a pulse she could feel through her bones. Her crown began to glow brighter, reacting to the threat. She knew now that she could not rely solely on the humans around her to protect her. She had to act, but she also understood that the crown's power was dangerous. Every time she reacted, she risked harming those she cared for. The first attack came swiftly. Beams of energy tore through the station's defenses. Walls shook. Lights failed. Alarms screamed. Soldiers shouted orders, but the alien ships moved like shadows, ignoring all resistance. The child focused. She reached out with her mind, feeling the crown's energy as if it were an extension of herself. She concentrated on the station, on the humans inside, on Tavin beside her. The crown responded, sending arcs of energy outward, bending the alien beams away from the station. Sparks flew, consoles melted, lights flickered violently, and then silence. The aliens hesitated. Now why? Their approach had been anticipated, their attacks deflected by a force they could not measure. Humans stared in awe, some whispering that the child had saved them again. Tavin only nodded, understanding fully what had happened. The crown had reacted, but not through fear or anger. It had reacted through understanding, through the child's connection to those who stood with her. But the calm did not last. The alien fleet regrouped, more determined than before. They had underestimated her. They had assumed fear and weakness. Instead, they found courage, loyalty, and the bond between a small child and those who chose to protect her. The child realized something profound. She was not just a weapon. She was not just a crown or a symbol. She was the living memory of an ancient civilization, yes, but she was also something new. She had the chance to change the outcome, to prevent the mistakes of the past from repeating. She had to be careful, but she had to act. Tavin knelt beside her. "Do you know what you must do?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I think, I understand, but it is too much." "I do not know if I can." He smiled gently. "You do not have to do it alone."
We will be with you every step of the way.
The alien fleet began a slow advance. The child's crown glowed brighter, responding to her determination. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the crown, the memories, the responsibility. She knew that the next moments would define not only her future, but the fate of everyone around her, and she was ready to try. The child of stars stood in her room, small and crowned with living light, yet inside her chest, something had shifted. She no longer feared the alien fleet approaching human space. She had learned that her power was not just in the crown, but in the humans who stood with her, who had chosen to protect her despite the danger. She had felt their courage, their hope, their loyalty, and it had strengthened her in ways she could not yet fully control. Outside the station, the alien fleet moved slowly, probing, testing, trying to understand the unexpected resistance. Their ships were dark, precise, and powerful, but they lacked the one element they could not calculate: human determination. They had assumed fear and weakness, but instead they encountered something entirely new. They encountered unity, and it was feeding the crown's energy. The child focused. She reached out with her mind, feeling every heartbeat of every human who had chosen to fight with her. Soldiers preparing weapons, engineers repairing broken systems, civilians evacuating to safety, all of them contributed to a pulse of energy that connected directly to the crown. She realized suddenly that this was the true power she had been given: not destruction, not domination, but connection. A beam of alien energy struck the outer hull of the station, and she felt it in her chest. The crown flared brightly, arcs of light dancing around her room. The station's walls trembled, consoles melted, sparks filled the air. But the humans outside did not falter. Their determination surged, feeding her power, stabilizing the crown, and redirecting the alien energy harmlessly into space. She smiled faintly. She had never felt so connected, so alive. This was not fear or anger. It was hope, courage, and trust. She realized that the aliens had misunderstood humanity. They had believed that strength came from weapons and technology, but she now understood that the true strength of humans came from their willingness to protect one another, to stand together against impossible odds. The alien fleet paused, confused. Their attacks faltered, beams bending and warping in ways they could not predict. Their ships collided with one another as if the very presence of human courage had disrupted their coordination. Commands could not reach the fleets. Sensors failed and their formations broke apart. They did not understand why their power was failing, but the child did. It was not her crown alone. It was humanity itself. Tavin knelt beside her, placing a hand on hers. "Do you see now?" he asked softly. "Your power is not just yours. It is ours. Together, we can protect everyone." She nodded, gripping his hand tightly. The crown flared brighter, sending arcs of light outward. The alien attacks faltered further, ships twisting and spinning as if caught in an invisible storm. The humans outside continued to act, some firing weapons that now seemed more like gestures than attacks, some repairing systems, some simply standing firm. Every heartbeat, every act of courage, fed the crown, and the alien fleet began to collapse under confusion and chaos. One of the alien ships fired a concentrated beam directly at the station. The crown reacted instantly, expanding a shield of pure energy that enveloped the station. The beam struck the shield and dispersed harmlessly, scattering light across the void. Sparks flew, consoles melted, and the walls of her room vibrated with the energy. The child felt every pulse, every vibration, every fear and hope, and she channeled it into a protective force that the aliens could not penetrate. The humans outside began to see what was happening. They saw that their courage, their determination, their loyalty was not just keeping them alive, it was empowering the child. They realized that by standing together, they were amplifying her strength, creating a force that the aliens could not calculate or counter. The alien fleet began to withdraw, their formations broken, their ships damaged by collisions and energy feedback. They did not flee in fear, but in confusion. They had underestimated humanity and the child of stars. They had assumed that she could be controlled or taken, but now they understood that she was more than a tool, more than a crown, more than a weapon. She was a living force of connection, a symbol of something the aliens could not comprehend. Inside her room, the child felt the crown pulse gently, as if in approval. She realized that she had not used its full power. She had only acted to protect, to defend, and to connect. She could have destroyed the alien fleet, but that was not what she wanted. She wanted to protect, not dominate. She wanted to stand with humans, not above them. Tavin looked at her, eyes wide with awe. "You did it," he whispered. "You protected us all." She shook her head. "We did it," she said softly. Together, the station was quiet now, save for the hum of systems coming back online. Humans emerged from shelters and control rooms, shaken but alive. They looked at the child, small and crowned with light, and they understood finally what they had been a part of. They had not just survived, they had stood together, and in doing so, they had amplified her power in ways the aliens could not comprehend. The crown above her head shimmered, sending gentle arcs of light across the room. It was no longer just a symbol of power, it was a symbol of connection, of trust, of courage. She realized that this was what the ancient creators had hoped for. They had created the crown to record their failures, but they had also left a chance for redemption. She was that chance, and humanity had helped her fulfill it. Outside the station, the alien fleet retreated, slowly vanishing into the void. They would return stronger and more determined, but they had learned a crucial lesson. The child of stars was not alone, and neither were the humans who had chosen to protect her. The child sat quietly, absorbing the moment. She felt the weight of the crown, the memories it carried, and the energy that now flowed through her. She realized that she had grown stronger, not through fear or anger, but through the courage and unity of those around her. She had learned that true power was not in destruction, but in connection, in trust, and in the willingness to stand together against impossible odds. Tavin remained beside her, smiling gently. "You have changed everything," he said softly. "Not just for us, but for them too. They will not forget what they have seen." She nodded, small and quiet, yet filled with a sense of purpose. She knew that the battle was not over, that the aliens would return, and that she would face greater challenges. But she also knew that she was not alone. Humanity had chosen her side, and together they were stronger than anything the galaxy could throw at them. The crown pulsed gently, a soft light that filled the room with warmth. She reached out with her mind, feeling the connection to every human who had stood with her, every heartbeat, every act of courage. She realized that this was the true meaning of her power. It was not domination, not destruction, not fear. It was connection, unity, and the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. For the first time, the child of stars felt something she had never known: hope. She was still small, still young, and still alone in her room. But she was not alone in the galaxy. She had allies, humans who had chosen to fight with her, to stand with her, and to protect her. She had learned that courage was contagious, and that unity was stronger than any weapon. And as she looked out at the stars, still distant and indifferent, she knew that the future was not yet written. The aliens would return, the challenges would grow, and the stakes would rise. But she also knew that she had learned something powerful. She could face anything, not alone, but together with those who believed in her. The crown above her head glowed gently, a soft light that promised more than protection. It promised understanding, connection, and hope. The child of stars had learned that true strength was not in power alone, but in the hearts and courage of those around her. And for the first time she believed that she could make a difference, not through fear or domination, but through unity, love, and the courage to stand together against impossible odds. The alien fleet had been repelled, but the story was not over. Far beyond human space, something ancient had watched, noting the child's actions, sensing the bond she had formed with humanity. They would return, not as destroyers, but as witnesses, testing the limits of her understanding, her compassion, and her power. Inside the station, the child of stars sat quietly, small and crowned with light, yet filled with a sense of purpose that stretched far beyond the room she occupied. She had survived her first great challenge, not by force alone, but by embracing the humanity that had chosen to protect her. And she knew that the next trials would come. She would need to grow stronger, wiser, and braver. But she was ready, because she was not alone, and she had humanity by her side. The galaxy had been silent for days after the retreat of the alien fleet. The humans in the station worked tirelessly to repair damages, replace systems, and restore order. Yet the child of stars felt a shift inside herself that she could not ignore. The crown above her head pulsed softly, but it was different now. It no longer reacted only to her emotions or the danger around her. It seemed to respond to something deeper, something ancient. She sat alone in her room, small and quiet, staring at the crown's gentle light. She remembered the visions from before, the memories of civilizations long gone, the wars that had destroyed galaxies, She realized that the crown had been created not only to record failures, but to offer a choice, a chance for redemption, and that choice had fallen to her. Tavan approached carefully, as he had many times before. "How are you feeling?" he asked. She shook her head. "I feel tired and heavy, but I think I understand now." "Understand what?" he asked softly. "That the crown, it does not want to rule," she said. "It wants to remember. It wants to learn. It wants to connect." Tavan nodded. "Then maybe it is time to decide what you will do." The child thought of the humans around her, the soldiers who had risked their lives, the engineers who had worked tirelessly, the civilians who had stayed calm in chaos. She thought of Tavan, who had never left her side, who had treated her like a child, not a weapon. She thought of the alien fleet, waiting beyond the stars, still powerful, still dangerous, and she realized something profound. She could end the fear, the waiting, the isolation. But to do it, she had to act. She stood slowly, small and trembling, yet resolute. The crown pulsed brightly above her head, arcs of light spreading outward. She closed her eyes, and the memories of the ancient civilizations filled her mind once more. But this time, she did not fear them. She understood them. She understood that power without compassion was dangerous, but power with love and connection could change everything. She reached out with her mind, and the crown responded. Light flowed outward, stretching beyond the room, beyond the station, beyond human space. It moved slowly, touching every human in the sector, linking them in a way they could feel but not fully understand. Courage, hope, and loyalty became a shared force, not just a shield, but a bond. The alien fleet sensed the change immediately. They moved forward, expecting resistance, expecting confusion, expecting fear. Instead, they found unity. How? They found humans standing together, linked by a force they could not measure. They found a child crowned with light, radiating power not as a weapon, but as connection. One of the alien ships fired a beam aimed at the child. The crown flared in response, but not violently. The light spread outward like ripples, bending the attack harmlessly around the station and into space. Another ship attempted a strike, and the same happened. Every attack faltered. Every movement became confused. The aliens began to withdraw slowly, understanding that this force was not their enemy, but something they could not challenge. The child opened her eyes. She felt the crown above her head, no longer heavy, no longer a reminder of fear. It was soft now, gentle, alive, but not demanding. She realized that the crown did not belong to her alone. It had belonged to civilizations long gone. It had witnessed their failures, and now it could belong to everyone. She extended her mind again, focusing on the crown. Slowly, gently, it began to split, not in anger, not in pain, but in understanding. The ribbons of light separated, floating outward into the station, into human space, spreading across communications, systems, and satellites. It became a shared symbol, a reminder of unity, courage, and the bond between humans and the child who had borne its light. The humans felt it immediately. They did not understand how or why, but they felt connected to each other in a new way. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Engineers stopped their frantic work. Civilians stopped running. A quiet calm filled every system, every mind, every heart. And in the center of it all, the child of stars stood small, crowned with light, but no longer alone. Tavin knelt beside her. "You've done it," he whispered. "You've given them hope."
She looked at him and smiled faintly. "No," she said softly.
"We've done it. All of us." The alien fleet retreated entirely, moving back into the void. They did not attack again, not because they were weak, but because they understood that the Child of Stars was not alone, and neither were the humans who had chosen to protect her. They had witnessed courage, unity, and connection, and it was something they could not challenge. Inside the station, the child finally felt peace. She was still small, still quiet, still aware of the weight of her power. But for the first time, she felt belonging. Humans no longer watched her with fear alone. They stood with her, beside her, sharing the light of the crown, sharing the responsibility, and sharing the future. She walked through the station slowly, looking at the people who had fought, who had protected, who had believed in her. She realized that she did not need to rule, did not need to dominate, did not need to carry the burden alone. The crown was not hers to bear alone. It had become a shared symbol, a reminder that strength came not from power, but from connection, compassion, and courage. Tavin followed her quietly. "Do you want to leave your room?" he asked. She nodded. Slowly, carefully, she stepped into the corridor. Lights flickered gently in response to her presence, but no alarms sounded. Guards relaxed. Scientists smiled quietly. Civilians watched in awe. She walked through the station, small and crowned with light, and for the first time, she did not feel alone. Outside, the stars continued to shine, indifferent and constant. The galaxy had changed, even if subtly. Humanity had proven that courage, unity, and compassion were more powerful than fear or weapons. The alien fleet had witnessed it, and they had learned it, and the Child of Stars had lived to see it, small and crowned, yet connected to something far greater than herself. She stopped in the observation deck, looking at the vast expanse of stars. The crown above her head shimmered gently, soft ribbons of light stretching outward. She felt the presence of humans everywhere, their courage and hope flowing into the crown and back into her. She understood that the crown's purpose had been fulfilled. It had witnessed the past, protected the present, and now offered a path for the future. Tavin joined her silently. "It is beautiful," he said softly. She nodded, still quiet. "It is belonging," she whispered. For the first time, the Child of Stars felt complete. She was still small. She was still young. She still carried immense power. But she was no longer lonely. She had humans beside her. She had courage, unity, and hope surrounding her. She had chosen connection over domination, trust over fear, and love over isolation. And for the first time she smiled fully, not quietly, not carefully, but openly, because she knew she belonged. The crown's light glowed softly, wrapping around her like a gentle embrace. No longer a burden, no longer a warning, no longer a weapon. It had become a shared symbol, a gift to all who had stood with her, a reminder that power without compassion was nothing, but power with connection could change the galaxy, and far beyond human space, in the darkness where ancient watchers observed, there was silence. The child had survived. She had chosen wisely. She had united those around her, and she had created a new story for the galaxy, one that would be remembered for generations to come. The Child of Stars, small, crowned, and no longer alone, turned to Tavin and whispered softly, "I am not afraid anymore." And the galaxy, vast and endless, seemed to whisper back, carrying her courage and her light across the stars.